Hey everyone, welcome to the California Real Estate Investor Podcast. My name's Alan Siebenaller. I've been an investor in California for 22 years, and I have with me today Keith and Yeva. They have been investing up and down the coast of California in all kinds of exciting places like wine country. I'm looking forward to diving into the deals that they've done recently, the numbers, all the details, how they did it, how they pulled this all off in a state where people are saying, we don't invest there. Let's dive in.
Hi, it's Alan here from the California Real Estate Investor Podcast. I want to share with you two cool free resources. First of all, our Facebook group, California Real Estate Investor. I'll put a link in the show notes. You can connect with us there, share stories, share about what you're doing, where you are in California, and we look forward to that. And then secondly, the website, the CaliforniaRealEstateInvestor.com. I've just uploaded a free mini course about flipping luxury homes. You can download there. If you're flipping homes and you want to make more profit per deal by going higher end with your flips, that's a great resource for you. So check that out. I look forward to connecting with you on the other side.
Keith, Yeva, welcome. So excited to have you. How are you doing today?
Hey, Alan. Good to see you. Happy to be here today.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, you got it. I am so excited. Now, Keith and Yeva and I are old friends, and I've been just watching them on this journey, and they've even picked up some properties I didn't know about. So it's really been fun for me to talk with them about this. Tell me first, what got you started buying properties up and down the coast? Like, how did you get sucked into that?
Well, we've always been travelers. Like ever since we started dating, we were always traveling together. And having met in Santa Monica and been working, doing life down in Santa Monica, like we always wanted to get out and enjoy everything that, the state of California had to offer around us. And so we were always doing weekend road trips with friends, the two of us, any combination. We were just getting out of town and just really just soaking in just all the wonderful things about California. So, I think one of the first places that we started to travel together was Los Olivos wine country, only 2 hours away from LA, 2.5 hours, depending on where you're driving from. So all those places that are like approachable by car was definitely appealing, as we had owned out-of-state real estate before, but we never really got a chance to use them much. But we always traveled in California and stayed, on little mini vacations in California. So that's where kind of our passion for thinking about, like, why don't we just start owning a place rather than living in California in Santa Monica where we work, living in our apartment, and then paying for these Airbnbs or other hotels that we would, spend money at on weekends or for a week trip here and there. We just started thinking, you know what, we should probably start thinking about investing in the places that we go and the places that we want to be. We can't be there full time because we work in LA, but, we're there all the time, a couple times a year, if not more. So let's just start thinking about places where we could invest and kind of start rethinking about, some of our out-of-state investments and move that money back into California where we're spending our time, where we could easily manage it too, where things would be a 2-hour drive away versus planning a 2-hour flight somewhere.
Right.
Also, we started having young kids, and the road trip just felt more feasible than getting in the plane to go on vacation. So that was another factor contributing to why we committed to California.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this has been an adventure not just for you, but for your kids too, it sounds like.
Yeah, they're fully vested. They know the lifestyle.
So then you've been traveling up and down, and then you ended up with your first purchase. It was a 4-unit in Paso Robles. Tell us a bit about this property.
Well, the property was probably not like any of the ones that we had been looking at for many months as we were in our search. We were looking for kind of the dream escape vacation rental home up on the hills with views and space and, to really kind of take in the country lifestyle. And then as we were looking and, either getting outbid on stuff or the numbers just didn't work the way that, we had really hoped for in terms of returns, like Yeva came across this one listing for this fourplex that was in downtown. And I was like, an apartment building? Really? Like, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but we're like, well, it is, under 700,000 for 4 units versus some of the houses that we were looking at were like 750, something like that. And so we're like, well, we'll go take a look at it. And when we saw it, we love the location. It's, about 2 blocks off of the Central City Park in downtown Paso Robles, and on a beautiful tree-lined street called Vine Street that has a lot of Victorian homes from the late 1800s, early 1900s. And so it was a super charming street. And then we arrive at this 70s apartment building that had been kind of under-maintained, to say it politely, to the other owner. It was something where we were like, okay, well, let's go take a look and see what it's all about. And so we toured it, and we can share some photos with you too, but it needed some love. Like, it needed exterior paint, it needed a new roof, it needed new flooring. It could still use windows. Like, there's all these upgrades that we've done and others that we haven't done yet that are just going to be kind of ongoing improvements to the property. But when we saw it, we just thought, the location's great. It needs a lot of work, but once this is up and running, it could be positive cash flow. But it was fully occupied with 4 long-term tenants in there. And so while it wasn't what we were dreaming of, which was to have this beautiful vacation home, I thought, well, you know what? It's probably a better investment. And so we started thinking seriously about it. And when we were thinking, I think that later that day after we saw it, or the next morning, talking to our agent, there was already an offer on it. And they hadn't actually signed it yet, but they were leaning to just get it under contract with the guy that had already put an offer. And so they were like, we're not saying that we're not going to entertain any other offers. And so we went in and just put in kind of our best offer that we could, knowing that it was slightly over asking, and hoped for the best. And, we ended up getting it under contract. And then during that time, that's when we got to really inspect the units, having it under contract, being able to gain access to do inspections and get in and see the state of this building. But it was some units were better than others. There were a few that, were kind of cluttered and could use some fresh paint and carpet, but they were generally, in serviceable condition. And then there were a few others, especially Unit C, that was just in really bad shape. And it had been, the people that were living there just lived, like in a third world lifestyle with garbage around, and it was just really gross. So we were kind of turned off a little bit by that, but we were trying to see through that and trying to see what its potential was on the other side.
That's when we had to really rely on our own grit to get through it.
I remember you telling me about that. Was that the cockroach unit?
And there were children living in that unit. And that was the greatest heartbreak to see the exposure these children had to. I still have memories of those children's faces. And it was very traumatic. And we ultimately decided to pay them to move out, which in many ways possibly could have been the best case scenario for those children, to no longer live in that environment. And hopefully wherever they found would never turn into what that was. We ended up partnering with Keith's sister and brother-in-law and ended up renovating all the units and renting them full-term initially. And then once we had the confidence that we could go and do short-term, we started furnishing one at a time and opening it up for short term. And our very first one got qualified for Airbnb Plus because of its unique design in the city. So
I love it.
That was very encouraging. So then we continued doing that for the other 2 as well.
I'm going to share pictures if anyone's watching online of those. But before we get to that, I remember you telling me about some sort of situation during renovations where there was like a gang and there was other stuff. What in the world went down while you were renovating this property?
So at one point we had hired a contractor who has helped with our previous units, and our full-time tenant has a daughter who got involved with a guy who was in a gang, and he had obviously made a bad deal and they came after him. And we were at that point renovating Unit A, and our long-term troubled tenant was in Unit B. And later, our contractor confessed to doing coke lines in the bathroom at 1 a.m. when a huge rock flew into the windows twice and completely startled him. And next thing we know, we have to also change our windows. The same gang ended up trying to set our building on fire, which we found out from the fire department. And these are the things that are completely unexpected. Nobody can prepare you for these scenarios. Doesn't matter how much experience you have. The human nature element of this business is very unpredictable. So we just can't let it stress us out too much. But we just take it one step at a time, and we just resolve the issue one step at a time and keep moving forward, because there is no other way to really do this except for one step after another.
Right.
And
Yeah,
we're
and
very
you can't
grateful.
like even completely avoid the risk, because it's not like you were in a neighborhood that was like a gang infested
Not at all.
neighborhood or anything like that. It was one of your tenants who had a boyfriend, and the boyfriend somehow got involved in a situation with this gang. They were coming back for retaliation, and unfortunately, that your contractor was in a different unit, and they thought maybe he was the boyfriend
Yes.
and went after him, and then oh my gosh.
No, it was
Um,
such a scene, and you don't expect to get these phone calls ever in your life while you're doing your, due diligent work, renovating a unit. There should be nothing of the sorts. And yeah, I mean, the only reason why our contractor ever told us is because he became a Christian at one point and felt the guilt of and needed to confess. So he did that because he felt like, I need to tell you what was really happening in the midst of the stuff
wow.
coming through the window. And yeah, I mean, you can't even write this stuff. It is just so insane.
So now you've gotten through the renovation. Let me pull up some photos here.
I'll
You
show.
just pulled in some of your design background and decorated this. Wow, it just looks beautiful.
We designed that was definitely looking very stereotypical 70s apartment, but with, pulling on the background
Yeah.
that we have, which is design and architecture. We were able to decorate it in a way that was pleasant and unique and warm and modern with good efficiency of space. So fast forward, this got selected as a Airbnb Plus, which gave us the encouragement to move forward. And since then, we have added two more to this building.
So fun. So you have the 4 unit building, you've got one long-term tenant in there, you've got three short-term rentals. And were you also staying in one of the units? Were you guys like traveling up there and enjoying it as well?
Yeah, we definitely have. Like, I think on some occasions when one's been being worked on or under construction, like we'll stay a few weeks in one of the adjacent ones just to kind of oversee stuff and pick up materials and help on the project. And so I think during
And do a
COVID
little
as
bit of
well, we
wine
stayed.
tasting.
Yeah, we stayed. Yeah, a little bit of wine tasting and a little bit of property management.
And
So
you'll
that
see the one that has the black and white interior. That's the unit that was being attacked by the gangs. 1 a.m.
Okay, so then you got Paso Robles situated. You were traveling up even further north, up into Redding. Tell me about what happened there.
When we were enjoying some of the beautiful landscape that's up in Northern California, we had some friends that moved up
Yeah.
there. There's a church we like going to, and every time we would go, we would spend a lot of money staying there. Even if it was a 4-day weekend, Keith and I decided, what if we just bought something here so we could come here more often, enjoy the nature, and since we already have the history of doing Airbnbs, we can offer our home. So we ended up with our first mid-century home that had the charm. And so ultimately, that was the first time that Keith and I packed up 26-foot U-Haul with all the furniture for a 3-bedroom house and drove it up right before 4th of July in 2017. And worked our way. In 2 weeks, we had that up and running and rented. And of course, Keith is extremely savvy with understanding elements of what people need, what people want. And then I pulled on my production design and film background with speed and sourcing. So between the two of us, we're a good team. So we
Love it.
try and move quickly in order to secure, that first mortgage payment to be somewhat supplemented by the Airbnb income.
Yeah, you guys make a great team. Keith, with your architectural and design, and Yeva with all of your diverse design experience. So, but I'm just curious right now. What happens when you have a difference of opinion and design? Like,
Yeva wins.
does that get heated, or
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
No, it's interesting. Yeah, we each like have certain things that we're really passionate about, and when we can tell that one of us is actually really passionate about that's the way this house should be, then when the other typically tends to back off. I think that we have
Uh,
certain things that we'll gravitate
Okay.
to, and like we'll take on our own little projects at the house. So
Yeah.
for me, like trying to make the homes feel like there's somebody's home away from home is important. And so, like, when it came time to get the Reading house set up, there was this perfect little nook in the corner of this family room that would have been perfect for a turntable and a record collection. And so I got my old turntable cleaned up, ready to go, and brought it up there along with probably 300 records, some that I had inherited from my dad. They're actually really special to me, but it's like we felt comfortable just keeping them there at the property and making it feel like something that when people arrive, like they're able to appreciate and enjoy that same music collection. We probably get more compliments on the music collection than we do on the house, which we're more proud of, but it's like sometimes there's unique things that people start to gravitate to. It's just kind of finding those moments to kind of infuse a little bit of your own personality and some things to make it feel really like someone's at a home away from home.
That's kind of the thing with Airbnb or just short-term rentals in general. The thing that people are really after is an experience, right? What really sets that property apart is this experience that they have, and part of that experience, it has to do with this record player and music collection, because they can't go to a corporate setting, a hotel or a big chain, and get that type of experience, right? Where there's this cool record player and this cool record collection that may give them some nostalgia or whatever, and they can enjoy with family and friends. And that's really fun. Sorry, Evan, did you have something to add to that?
No, I completely agree. I think experience in Airbnbs, it's such a core value for sharing your home. And we treat these homes the way that we would enjoy. We create spaces and moments and vignettes where when we host friends in our own homes, that we can create these core memories with. So that's really the backbone to why we love this business so much, is because it has the perfect canvas to create these beautiful memories with family and friends.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think the
and
first step.
Reading was basically, it was like becoming a home away from home for you
That,
as well.
that was our home where we had our wonderful 2 weeks turned into 2.5, 3 months pandemic isolation, and we invited another family to stay with us. So we would now be totally isolated. So we created our own little pod.
So for future pandemics, if anyone's looking for a great place to go and isolate and have quarantine time, Reading is an amazing place for it. It's just such easy access to the outdoors. I mean, even working from home during the day and then at 5 o'clock heading out to the lakes and going fishing or taking the kids on a sunset hike up in the mountains. It's just a great place to kind of stay for a while and really get comfortable there. But I was just going to say that I
Yeah,
think
and it's
when it comes to design, like a lot of the work, we try and find homes that already have like this a good spirit about them, a really good sense of place and a good sense of kind of design character, whether that's the siding of the house and all those other things, where at the end of the day, like you can pick furniture piece A and A or B, paint color A or B, and it's still going to be a good experience. It's like you can kind of tilt it one way or the other, but most of the properties that we try and find ones that are largely like ready to go day one, that we want to put our touches on it and we want to improve a few things, but hypothetically, like that house, we could get the keys and basically have it turnkey ready to go the next day for a new renter. And so sometimes that turnover may take 1 to 3 weeks, but not much more than that, because we try and keep it to minor little maintenance things, touch up. Maybe there's a couple pieces of section 1 work that have to be done and some kind of minor repairs, but really like we try and find properties that aren't going to bear us down into kind of a pit of unknowns and unforeseen. We're looking for houses that are in good condition and could be kind of converted to an Airbnb really quickly. That said, there's
right.
plenty of opportunities to go the other route and find projects, but because we both work
Right.
in either with the family, when we're not, working 10-hour days, our time's valuable, and we're trying to find projects that are going to be smooth transitions. So finding ones where other people have either maintained the homes really well or put their own previous renovations into them, those are normally the ones that we're looking at when it comes time for an Airbnb.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we're going to get to your most recent purchase, the Ventura County Thousand Oaks ones that you got ready in less than 2 weeks. I want to dig into that. But before we go there, after Redding, again, another wine country purchase, actually two, you were in Sonoma and you stumbled into a property or two there. What happened in Sonoma?
Yeah, so Sonoma County has always been a really special place for us because we got married up there after a few trips of really enjoying it up there and wanting to do a destination wedding. Like international seemed too far. And so we thought, you know what, like let's do a destination wedding, but not too far away. And so we found the town of Healdsburg kind of the perfect place to do that because it has a quaint little downtown and it has properties that were just outside of town on some hillside vineyards. And we found a place there. It worked out great for our wedding. And we've been going back there kind of every year since. And we've always wanted to invest in that wine region, whether it's the Napa side or the Sonoma side. And regulations have been kind of present there on the Napa side for, I think, since the 80s. It's been, 30 to 40 years of kind of really tight permit control there to keep expansion of short-term rentals down. And so we knew that was kind of always off the table. And we always stayed on the Sonoma side just for that. Even if we had events and things going on in Napa, it's a 30 to 40 minute drive. We would find Airbnbs or other places to stay on that side of town, whether it was city of Sonoma, Santa Rosa. And so we're always interested in finding a place that could work there. And in, I think it was 2017, 16, 17, they were working on new regulations for city of Sonoma. And so that slowly, we saw that shutting down, and some of the ordinances that were being adopted for regulations there kind of making that less desirable as a place to invest. And so it really started to kind of point towards the city of Santa Rosa as like this land of opportunity. It wasn't as romantic and desirable of a town. It's more of like a middle-class working town. A lot of blue-collar stuff, factories there, wine making, wine shipping facilities, etc. But we're like, it's a great town that's open for business, if you will, in terms of short-term rentals. And so we started looking there, and really throughout pre-pandemic and even into the pandemic while we were looking, it just started to get very competitive there. And there were many places where we were getting outbid with offers that were 150 over asking, 150,000. It was kind of mind-boggling to us. And so it took us a couple of years to identify some properties that we could be competitive on. And I think right around the same time, we found these two that we thought could be perfect, but they were so different. One was a 1955 mid-century 2-bedroom tucked into the trees on a slope. And then the other one was brand new construction, kind of in a new tract on a vineyard. Right. And so it was kind of builder housing, just a different type of structure, different type of setting, but they both worked. And we were trying to decide which one to make an offer on. And one night at a dinner party, we were talking to a friend about these properties that we were interested in. And he's like, why don't you just get both? And we kind of laughed at him for a minute. And then I kind of started thinking, well, maybe he's onto something. Maybe we could pull this off. Right. And so
he's very entrepreneurial.
Yeah. He's the kind of guy that he has the financial capability to do that ourselves. Like, it seemed like a stretch, and it did become kind of a really stressful process trying to make it happen for both of these, just due to the debt, right? Like, because we're going to take these down and take on big loans for both. My lender at Chase, Jung Lee, told me that it's the hardest loan he ever did, but we made him better for it. So it was a journey, but we went through, and closed on both of them within a couple weeks. And, we were super excited. We, at the time, had no idea that the same day that we closed on the first one, that there was an urgency ordinance hearing at City Council to basically put a temporary stop on short-term rentals. Meanwhile, we're moving on with our business, like enjoying it up there, moving up furniture, moving in, getting it set up, but kind of taking our time. Because, we were just super excited to be there. It had taken us so many years to kind of identify these properties, find kind of the perfect homes that worked for our family. And then it wasn't until we spent Thanksgiving there and throughout the holidays. And then I think early in January, we caught wind of it and we're kind of shocked. And we're like, well, we got to get our permits in. And then when we went to get our permits in, we had kind of missed this grace period where properties, if they would have submitted, by December 4th, could have been kind of in this window before things shut down. And we didn't even know about it because we didn't get the mailers. We did all of our due diligence before closing, before we bid on it, all the conversations with planning about the permit process and, making sure that certain neighborhoods were fine, certain other restrictions that nothing applied to these homes. We made sure to get a house that didn't have an HOA, that didn't have any other kind of restrictions on short-term rentals. And so we thought we had done, everything right and got ourselves set up for success. But things quickly changed. And then we found out that we were shocked in not just one property, but we had bought both of these houses and kind of doubled down in that neighborhood, thinking that this is the place where we're going to find success. And before we realized that this whole ban had even started in its process of kind of capping the permits and everything, we had started to get it ready for Airbnbs. Since then, we've had to basically transition to midterm rentals. We're doing 30-day minimum, fully furnished rentals, inclusive of all utilities. It's actually working out fairly well. We don't get to use them as much, but they are cash flow positive. When there's gaps between renters, we have little windows where we can go up and enjoy it. So it's certainly not the same as the flexible lifestyle of blocking out your calendar for 4 days when you need to be there. We kind of just follow the rental calendar, and we kind of make opportunities where we have a gap in the calendar that the bookings are kind of locked in at. But it still gives us an opportunity to get up there. We were just up there for a few weeks in June to enjoy our vineyard house, and we're able to host a bunch of friends and just really have a great time just enjoying the area and the house itself. Now we're going to get a new renter in there and miss it for a few months, but it's working out well considering.
Before we move to your most recent purchase, I want to dig a little bit into, in case people aren't familiar with the midterm rental, right? So basically, if I can recap what happened there, short-term rentals were essentially shut down in that area, and you transitioned the property to midterm rental, which means a minimum of 30 nights, right? And so you're still renting it on short-term rental websites. You can still put it on Airbnb or put it on VRBO or put it wherever. It's just going to be there for a 30-day minimum, 30-night minimum. Then you attract people that are looking for something for anywhere from 1 to 6 months. I mean, I've had someone in mind that was a university professor from Eastern Europe. He came in for the entire academic year with his family, and it was perfect for him, right? Because he needed furniture. They had a 2-year-old with them, and they just needed something that was turnkey, and they could just plug and play, and he could teach his thing at the university. So what type of people do you get that, for these midterm rentals, and how long do they stay?
Yeah. So typically, like most of the people that are looking, they tell you, well, we're not sure how long we need it for, but maybe we need a month or two. And that was the case with our vineyard house in October, when we had a gentleman and his wife that were moving from Santa Cruz into Santa Rosa because he got a job as CEO locally. They wanted to find the perfect house, but it was going to take some time, but they needed to move because his job was starting in a few weeks. And so they found our place, and they thought it'd be perfect for a month or two. They were in an environment where, interest rates were rising and there wasn't a lot of inventory, and it just made it tough for them to buy a home. So their 1 to 2 months turned into about 8 months. And, they spent a good part of, last year and this year just enjoying the house until they found their dream house. And they've upgraded to, this beautiful home in Fountain Grove, which is amazing for them. But this kind of filled that gap for them in that season, when they needed housing. Yeah, that's when it feels like it's a great offering for people that are in that zone where they don't need to buy a house quite yet, or they can't afford to, but they need housing short term. Yeah, sometimes we've got another renter that's been there same amount of time, basically, at our mid-century house on the other side of town. He came in October as well, thinking that he was going to be there for a month or two, and he's still there, and he just keeps extending every month. So once they get comfortable, sometimes like they realize, this is kind of nice to have a landlord that, takes care of all the bills, takes care of maintenance on the house, They just pay the monthly fee, and they have no kind of restrictions on time. They can give their 30-day notice and be out anytime, or they can extend as long as they want. So it's kind of a good deal for them as well. I think most
Yeah.
people say that traveling nurses probably fill out the large portion of that.
Yep.
Like, we personally haven't got these up on Furnish Finder or some of those other ones that kind of specialize in that kind of market. But we found folks through Airbnb or through Zillow Rental Manager. I think those are the only two that we've really used, and we've been able to fill the places that way. So we haven't really expanded where we're listing the properties. But yeah, there's a lot of properties out there, a lot of places where you can basically be marketing these if they're midterm rentals.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had traveling nurses.
Some of them are building homes that construction schedule keeps extending, and they need that in between space. So they often, that's another couple that stayed at our home while they're building their home.
Yeah. And I think the other,
or if they have fire damage or flood damage, that then the insurance company writes you a check and says, hey, these people need a home for 4 months while their home's being repaired. And literally you get a check from an insurance company. That stuff happens too.
I mean, anywhere in California these days is at a high risk of fire danger. And so there's always people that are going to be displaced, and there just aren't many places where they can just comfortably move for a couple months while they get their life sorted out and identify a new home to purchase or to rebuild. So it kind of fills a nice gap there.
You have to be careful about saying everywhere in California is high risk of fire damage, because my relatives in the Midwest, every time there's a fire, they're calling me, asking if my house is burning down. And so, because, the news is like, the whole state's burning. And I have to explain to them every time, I'm like, I'm in the middle of a neighborhood. Like, it would have to burn through 1,000 homes to get to me. Like, I'm fine, right? But I totally hear what you're saying. There's a lot of homes in the hills or different areas where they get displaced. Maybe their home doesn't burn down, but they have to evacuate or whatever. And so there's a lot of transition. The interesting thing is, on my affordable furnished units in Oklahoma and Texas, I've had all sorts. I've had oil companies in the Texas property where they had oil workers coming in, and these were like engineers and stuff, and they would rent a 2-bedroom apartment from me for 6 months, and the oil company would write me a check. Like, that's a good check, right? Sometimes for the whole 6 months, just said, hey, we'll take this apartment for the next 6 months for our engineers coming through. And because they didn't want to stay in a hotel, they wanted a kitchen, that sort of stuff. So it's really interesting. It is actually a big need. The midterm housing is a big need in the market. I've also had the same thing as you, where someone's moving into an area, and when they're completely new in an area, they don't want to buy a house right away, or they don't even want to rent a place right away. They want to kind of feel the area out and get an idea of where they want to be and where they want to land. And it's hard to look at places from a distance. So they just need a landing pad, right, for a few months. And that works really well too.
Yeah, I think keeping an eye on midterm rental progress in California and kind of how that continues to evolve, I think will be really interesting, because I think a lot of properties, I'd like to say that all of our properties, if we're going to purchase a property, it has to work as a long-term rental first. Then if we can do midterms on it, that's even a little bit better. Yes. And then short-term is kind of just icing on the cake. If you can be in a market where that can work, then that's great. And you can expand your business and potentially cash flow that way. Yeah, midterms are just, I guess, giving me confidence that there are ways in tight regulation to find a way to kind of still be cash flow positive. And so California takes a lot of heat for maybe its investability these days, but I think if you're creative about the way that you're going to offer properties, whether it's short, mid, or long term, there's plenty of ways in different markets to find ways to make sure that property is going to be cash flow positive.
Yes. And you just nailed it, because there's a fine balance between creativity and stupid, right? Because, sorry to be harsh, but if someone's buying a property based on the most aggressive projections of only short-term renting it for maximum dollar, like high season dollar, and then that's why a lot of the news right now is saying a lot of people are going to be throwing these properties back on the market or whatever, because some people are not being conservative in their underwriting or looking at these numbers and thinking, okay, I cannot just base this investment on the best case scenario,
or base it on what they heard on
more
one
base
TikTok
it on
video, right? And this lady says,
Yeah,
I got this
yeah,
house for
paste it on TikTok.
400,000 and I rent it for 400 a night at 80% occupancy.
TikTok financial advice. Exactly. Like you want to base it on conservative estimates, conservative numbers. What would it look like on a year lease? What would it look like on a midterm? Right. And then also, is it a lifestyle piece? Some of these are lifestyle pieces. You're investing, I would call it a lifestyle investing strategy, right? Because it's not just the numbers. It's not there's so much more that goes into it. So and yeah, what I was saying about midterm is that we've gotten people that are just coming into areas and they're needing a place to land. You know, whether that's in Oklahoma or Texas or California, where we've got these midterm properties, is they're moving into a new area. They don't know the area. It's hard to look at rentals or places to purchase from a distance. So they need a landing spot, and to have something that's already furnished and turnkey, they can land there for 1 to 3 months and look around at the neighborhoods and different properties. It's like perfect for them. People love that. And so that's been a huge need that we've been able to meet in the marketplace. So let's dive into your most recent purchase. That was the Ventura County Thousand Oaks property. Tell us about this property. What was going on in the market? How'd you find it? What happened with this one?
Well, this one was different for us because when we found it, we were actually looking for a friend. Like we have a friend and neighbor that was looking to buy a kind of a house to get away to because he had lived in this apartment building with us before we got there. He's been there over 40 years. He's retired and he's kind of sick of having neighbors and noise next door through that party wall and all that. And he wants something with a little bit more space. And so we're like, well, let's start looking. And we kind of found a few links and we were kind of always feeding him some links to some interesting properties that we would find. When I came across this one, I'm like, this is a great property. And I sent it over to him. I got really excited about it for him. And we sent it over, we showed it to him. He was kind of curious. And I think as we were looking at it with him and kind of trying to help him get the confidence to step out and buy his first property, we found out that he was going to have the peace of mind if we went in on it with them. And so we started talking to him about, well, let's partner on it with you. If you don't want to be there all the time, we can help you generate revenue when you're not there and make it something that's more comfortable for you. Because it was kind of a big thing for him to emotionally wrap his head around that kind of financial commitment because he's never had a house where he's had to put a down payment or commit to a long-term mortgage like that. And so it was kind of a big step for him. So we decided we would go in on it with them. It's a long, complicated story, but let's just say he eventually did get cold feet and he decided that, he wasn't comfortable moving forward and he just wanted to pull out while he was in the inspection phase of the escrow period. And so we tried to kind of give him confidence, peace of mind about certain things, that these are normal things that come up during a home inspection. We can work through this. They're reasonable repairs. We'll get reasonable credits for them, et cetera. But he just wasn't comfortable and he decided to pull out. And we had kind of emotionally spent a lot of time getting it under contract through a bidding war. We're super excited to be partnering with him on it.
We had outbid for 8 other offers at that point. So
Wow.
That was already a miracle right there.
The asking price was $840. We got it under contract for $888, which was, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is going to go over asking. And in my head, $888 was the number that I saw pop up. Like, this is what it's going to take to win this property. And that's what we ended up getting it under contract under, was the $888. And we started, moving forward with our friend at this time. And it wasn't until literally about 3 or 4 days, I think, before we had to release that inspection contingency that he dropped out. We kind of talked about it ourselves and we're like, but this is just a great house. It's a great opportunity. Why don't we just do it by ourselves if John's not going to do it? And so we talked about it and we're like, let's do that. Let's figure out a way to keep it under contract. And so we were trying to talk to him about hey, before you cancel, what if you just talk to us about maybe assigning the contract? Let's make sure that we don't let this slip away, because if you decide to pull out, we definitely want to have the availability or the option to try and keep it moving forward. He didn't want any part of that. He just wanted to be out entirely. So he just called the agent and he canceled, and that was it. It was out of contract. And we told our agent, hey, we're still interested. We'll find a way to get it back under contract, just us. Of course, they needed a pre-approval letter, and John was going to get the mortgage under his name. He had a pre-approval letter. We hadn't even started the process, and we had just closed 2 houses within the last 12 months. So for us, we just thought this is just not going to happen, but let's try and let's get that pre-approval letter. It took us
set our mind to it.
It took us about 4 days to kind of start the application process, work with our lender to try and get the pre-approval letter, because it was complicated. We had to demonstrate all of our sources of income. We hadn't filed our tax return yet because we had an extension, to October 15th. And so we had to do other things like get our tax return done. He wouldn't do it without the tax return. And so that's why it took, a few days to get everything in line to even get a pre-approval. In that time, the sellers just weren't patient enough to kind of try and get us under contract. So they decided to put it back on the market, had another open house the next Saturday. They got a brand new slew of people that saw it for the first time that were interested, that all came out. And then another bidding war ensued. And so we had to basically go through it all over again, just Yeva and I. And in going through that process, we had, I think the only advantage was that we had done all the inspections and we knew what we were getting. We knew what needed to be replaced. We knew what those values were. We had quotes on everything. When we went in with a newer, lower offer at 870, it was still going $30K over asking, even knowing what we needed to put into it in terms of just some other repairs and things. And so at that time, I think having it with no inspection contingency and only going in with a loan contingency, I think it did give us a pretty strong offer. And so even though there were some that were higher numbers,
huge. Yeah,
they were kind of like our original one at 888, right? Like I think they had some that were 880, 890 maybe, but they had inspection contingencies and they'd have to start that whole process over. And this family was ready to relocate to the house that they were buying in Idaho. And so they were getting ready to move to Coeur d'Alene and they wanted to have a quick closing. They didn't want to have another inspection period. So we got it back under contract.
Huge.
And then we went through.
Let me just explain, Keith, to anyone listening that doesn't understand that language that you just used. When Keith said that they had no inspection contingency, that in the previous escrow, you did your inspection, you knew everything about the property. And so when you made this new offer, you made it saying, we do not need to do an inspection. That is not a contingency of this offer. You still had your loan contingency in place. So if your loan didn't work out, you could have pulled out. But basically, it's pretty much a guarantee that every other offer you were competing against had some sort of inspection contingency because they didn't get to inspect the property. So that gave you a major advantage, and you're still going above asking. So yeah, that makes sense. So you got it in escrow a second time.
And then, yeah, it was a very challenging loan application process to try and get this house and talk to different lenders. Finally, we're able to get the finance contingency released after a couple extensions to give us more time. And then we closed. And a lot of people were asking us like, well, why Thousand Oaks? And are you guys thinking about turning that one into an Airbnb as well? Because people are like, are you guys moving out there? I do a lot of work in Thousand Oaks and I know the city pretty well. This is about 8 houses down from a big development that I'm working on. And I knew the development money that's pouring in to this neighborhood and the commitment to these neighborhoods that developers are kind of investing into. And there's a commitment to kind of rebuild parts of the city and just rejuvenate them. And so for me, it was more of like, it's just a good place to park, for future growth in terms of appreciation. But yeah, I'm there all the time anyway for business meetings and stuff. And it would be a house that we could use when we're free or the house is available. And so for those reasons, normally every place that we look at, there's like multiple reasons why it would work. Either it's going to have really good cash flow or it's going to be a great place for our family and friends to spend a lot of quality time. And for us, it's like if it can check all the boxes, then it's kind of a winner that's worth investing into. And this was one of those. And I think a lot of people thought like, and me as well, I think when we were thinking about like, well, how would this do as an Airbnb? Because it's like, what's the destination in Thousand Oaks, right? It's not Miami. It doesn't have a thriving culture and art scene. It's not wine country. It doesn't have access to world-class wineries, etc. But what it does offer is, I think there's a lot of families there and a lot of people are traveling to be in and around families or coming into town for weddings or other big events. And so for us, it's been probably our top grosser this year on a monthly basis. It's been kind of like maybe more of a pleasant surprise. We knew we could cover our costs and make a little bit of money, but I think it's done even better than that for us, which has been really
I want to dive into just the numbers a little bit on this one, and then Yeva, I want to hear from you because I know you pulled a real design number on this one. But give me the numbers. So you're buying it for it's 870, right? And then what is your monthly expense? I know you're also using it yourself. So what do your numbers look like on this property?
Yeah, as you can imagine, like the fluctuation between winter and summer is pretty big in Thousand Oaks. And so part of it, I think, was getting the momentum to get the property to a place where it was cash flow positive. Just because you're a brand new listing, you don't have any bookings when you start. So you're kind of really going from a clean slate. But, our costs due to the high interest rates, this was 6.25. It still made sense for us to do it because we still thought that we could cover that. And if rates go down and we could refi, great, we would take advantage of that. And we hope to, within the next 12 months or so, if that happens, if we can get into the fives, which, a couple years ago sounded high, but now it sounds pretty good. If you could get to 5.25, 5.5, like we would jump on that with utilities, taxes, principal, and interest, with everything all in. I think we're slightly over $6,000 a month. And in the slow months, like January, when we were renting it out, well, December and January, I think we were right around 6,500 or something. So it was slightly positive, but we were also using it ourselves when it wasn't booked out. So in January, it was open for Super Bowl. I mean, we had World Cup days that we were spending watching World Cup there with friends and having big groups over.
We host
Super
a lot
Bowl.
of parties at this house because it's local, and we have a lot of friends in Ventura County. So we always throw big parties in this house.
Yeah, and I think as the spring and summer have kind of ramped up, it's been more profitable, probably, monthly, maybe hitting around 10, 11, sometimes 12,000 a month gross. It's one of those things where we know that that's kind of a peak and it's a high season, and if it does peak like that, that's great, but it's for a month or two, and then it'll soften out again. And we're thinking that probably on average it's probably going to average about 7,500 to 8,000 a month gross, and so there's room for about 1,500 to 2,000 a month profit at the end of the day.
What's the estimate value? If you bought it for 870, you put a bit into it, but what's your estimated valuation now?
We think it's right around $1 million, which is about what we think that it probably was worth in my mind in terms of the comps. I think the seller probably could have gotten more. It was one of those things where it was the best value listed at that time. And I think that even though the market's been flat, like if we had to sell it today, I think we could sell it and still, make a little bit of profit on it if we had to drop the property. But with all of our properties, we're typically buying for the long term. We're investing in a property that we're going to hold on to indefinitely, where it's more of like a legacy for our family to kind of pass down and inherit these properties. So I'm sure in some cases, like as our financial goals or real estate investing goals change, like the locations could change and it might make sense to sell one or two in certain cities and kind of move it into other areas. But that aside, if we can't afford to keep them, if they're all cash flow positive, we would just keep all of them and just find new opportunities to invest in and just keep those rolling. So that's kind of the goal that we're trying to develop. And so it continues to add places that our family can utilize, as vacation spots or bring friends to and really just share lifelong experiences. But there's no reason to really sell them at this point unless there was a need to cash out.
So then on this one, Yeva, you had this pressure, self-imposed. This was your goals, better way to say it, to get this thing turned around. Like when it closed, you'd already been planning ahead to get this thing furnished and art and everything in was it 2 weeks?
Yeah. Having worked in the Hollywood industry and doing sets and films and commercials, my timeline on all those projects is days, and I could dress and design 10 sets in less than a week. So that helps to create that urgency and sourcing. And as we know, LA is ample with its opportunities. So having had that history, I knew a lot of places and contacts where to source things. And I know people that have brand new mattresses that are, really good quality mattresses that we use on all of our properties. and they come from staged homes brand new, but they're half the price, quarter of the price. And so I have been in contact with a lot of these people, a lot of outlets. And so all that helps because I
That's
also
a
do that.
good tip right there. So you pick up some of this furniture from, it sounds like home stagers, right? Because it's
Correct.
been barely even used, if used at all, and you can get it for a fraction of the price that way.
Correct. And also
Love it.
Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, or some outlets that are around the LA area that are always good sources. Even vintage stores like boutique, Salvation Army boutique stores in Santa Monica usually have incredible slew of designer furniture that is available for a quick pickup. Since I've been doing this for a long time, it does somewhat come easy, and I do this for my clients outside of my own properties. So I do the same thing for clients on projects that I design as an interior designer. So, but this one, we had decided, Keith and I decided on the palette, and as you saw, more of a, I call it citizens or article kind of inspiration, where it has a lot
Oh yeah, let me pull up some pictures here.
of beautiful lighting is coming through with the vaulted ceilings. So it was an easy and a fun one to do, just because this is also our first property within LA area that we have owned, but we've done a lot of properties in LA for other clients. Keith mentioned that previously, we like to do it together. It helps that Keith and I have similar value systems instead of our aesthetics and what we like to see when we visit our own properties. So this was an easy one to do, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because we were very much aligned in terms of what our vision was for it. So we really enjoyed, and plus we negotiated some of these, like the outdoor patio, with the previous owners to leave that behind. And they also left behind all the TVs because it costs just as much as a TV to move across country, because the moving companies charge you hundreds of dollars to build special TV boxes. So sometimes they prefer leaving it behind. And
Wow.
we inherited
That makes sense.
several TVs, and we only knew about it when we showed up on the day of closing and we saw all the television sets were left behind for us.
Are you doing some of these accent details? Like right now we're looking at this picture of those wood strips on the wall.
The wood
Yeah.
Are
slats and
you adding those?
the fixtures on the wall we got
Yeah, we
installed.
added all of that ourselves.
That's so cool. Yeah, if you're not seeing this visually, they took wood strips and vertically put them across like an accent wall in the bedroom, and then mounted these incredible like lights on the wood strips. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, and we try and aim to make it look like a hotel lobby, hotel bedrooms, have a lot of that hospitality quality to it, but still feel like a home.
This is so fun.
We fit, this is a 4-bedroom house, and sometimes when we gather with our friends, we tend to fill this place up with a lot of people.
Huh?
So definitely have made amazing memories at this property already, and it's only been less than 10 months.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to wrap up our time and just ask you, I feel like you've shared quite a bit about what is your most enjoyable aspect to doing this. And it sounds like it's the experiences you create both for you and for your guests. I mean, would you agree, or what is it that you're enjoying about this?
I think the hosting quality, it's such an innate part of our humanity. We have been welcoming people into our homes and tents and huts, and as such a backbone to our identity as people. So this is just more of a modern, refined version of that. But ultimately, we just absolutely love hosting and creating memories with
Yeah.
our friends. And for example, we were on the road most of this month visiting all of our properties with our friends, and our kids love it. And we welcome different families to come and stay with us. So we were in the Vineyard House that is extremely relaxing for 3 weeks. We were there, kids did camp in Santa Rosa, so it was a fun way of getting to know a city that we don't live in, but get to participate in their community, in their events, and really be able to soak in all the highlights of all these little micro cities in California. And California offers so much beauty, so much natural beauty, but also cultural beauty. There's so much investment that went into this beautiful state. And the art, the architecture, the nature, the culture, the food scene, the wine scene, just really fun to travel in this state. And
Yeah.
we're going on our 7th year of doing our summer road trips, visiting all of our properties up and down the state. And every year we discover something new. There's still so much that has not been discovered by us that we still want to do. So our goal is not to sell these properties, like Keith said, is to just keep building on all the years and creating more memories, inviting more friends. We're going up to Paso. We have a new set of friends that we have made through some of our small groups through church, and this will be their first time coming to Paso, and we get to introduce them to a place that we love. They're gonna stay in one unit, we're gonna stay in another unit. It's like playing house like when you're a little kid, but in real life. It's just fun. It's just really
That
fun
is
to
so
do
fun.
life like that. Ultimately, our goal is to be able to do this for a long time, as we all enjoyed, and pretty much everybody that we have invited enjoys it. So it's good times.
Just looking at these pictures and hearing your stories, I realize you guys really have a gift. And the gift is not just a gift of design. You have that, but it's a gift of hospitality. It's like where design and welcoming like people in come together. Like you have those two things working together, just this gift of being hospitable and welcoming and hosting. And then, you throw your design skills into that, and it's just so fun. It's such a fun experience for people. Yeah, so I just want to thank you. You've spent a lot of time with us today. Thanks for sharing your story and just these properties. I really want to have you back on to talk. We can talk a bit more about just the environment of short-term rentals and the political environment and some of the even harder topics, right? About neighborhoods and does some of this ruin neighborhoods? Just all that stuff. Just really kind of stir the pot, and I'd love to dive into some of that side of this discussion. I really love what you're doing. I love how you're using the properties for work and for pleasure and creating community. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us today, and I look forward to having you back on. Does that sound good?
So fun talking to you, Alan.
And I will say, you guys have the same gift, because we have come and stayed with you. You guys are amazing hosts.
Thank you. We look forward to the next time together.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
We look forward to the deep dive.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Alan. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for listening to the California Real Estate Investor Podcast. We'd love a review on whatever podcast platform you listen to this on. Also, visit us at thecaliforniarealestateinvestor.com or our Facebook group, The California Real Estate Investor. We look forward to connecting with you and encouraging you on your real estate investing journey.